and welcome to Career Spotlight with Vanessa Ajamai. Today, I'm so excited to introduce another guest. Before I do, remember to subscribe in order to hear amazing career journey stories about decisions and steps that people have made in order to get to where they're currently at or where they're going, and to get more information on various career pathways. So with me, I have Prince Baffour, who is a finance professional. So I'll just leave it at that, and Prince will expand more on exactly what he does. Hi, Prince.
Oh, hi, Vanessa.
How are you doing?
I'm fine, thanks. How are you?
Yeah, I'm good. Thank you. Thank you so much for agreeing to come and share your career journey today. So, as usual, we'll dive straight into it. And if you could just start off by telling us like what you do and your role.
Yeah, so basically, currently I'm group financial controller for Alico, which is a software business in the construction industry. Um, I started off mainly as an accountant. So what I do, a lot of it is keeping financial records for the business. Um, and presenting them. So it boils down mainly to presenting what we call a profit and loss account for the business, which shows how much revenue the business is making, how much profits they make after all their costs have been taken into account, and then the balance sheet and cash flow. So the other basis is to do with the value of the business and how much cash is in the business to enable the business to trade. So that's why I do. A lot of it is monthly reports. Then we have year-end filing of accounts. So I prepare that, and that is filed at the company's house. We also do half-year filing of accounts as well. So it's around that, mainly looking after the finances of the business.
That's interesting. And there's a lot, it seems there's a lot that comes together to make um,
Yeah,
everything happen.
yeah, no, absolutely. Because and it's an international company, so we are in 6 countries at the moment, which means that obviously you'd have to have oversight of what's going on in those other territories. Because I would put all of the accounts together from those locations. So it's what I call a lot of moving parts to get to the final results. And the most, challenging is to be able to understand all those moving parts, and to be able to effectively, you put the pieces together, but to be able to also unpack them so that if there's any queries, because we get audited as well. So, if an auditor throws up a question, you should be able to investigate enough to get to the bottom of it and understand what's going on. Yeah.
Nice. So I always like to find out exactly what was like your motivation to study accounting and finance and go into that pathway.
Yeah, so it's interesting because my parents wanted me to be a doctor. Uh, you get that quite a bit, especially when I was growing up. And before I went off to secondary school, before I chose my subjects effectively. So I was thinking about it. I had a physics book and all that, trying to, figure out if this is what I want to do. And to be honest, the science was very difficult. So fortunately for me, I was able to decide not to do what my parents wanted me to do. And I thought, okay, let me do business studies and accounting. When I did it, I found it easy to understand, and I'm a very practical person. So whatever I'm doing, I like to relate it to what I see on a daily basis. So I could figure that out and understand it much better than all these science experiments and all that.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what made me decide to go into it. However, as I went on, I also, by the time I got to university, I was able to do some work experience and, started work experience. My first job, I didn't get paid, it was just work experience and, did it for several months. But by the time I had done that work experience, I knew this is the field that I felt comfortable with, and I could understand and apply what I'm studying to the practical way of doing things, at the workplace. So that was the reason why I went into it. It's accounting, I'll be honest, it's not for everyone because it's not as exciting, it's tedious, right? But it's very fulfilling if you know what you're doing. And it takes a while to build that up, and that's why a lot of jobs, they'll ask you for experience, right? Because they want to know that, yeah, you've done it and you know what you're doing. But yeah, that was kind of the process that led me to stick with it as a career.
Sure. This isn't the first time that I've heard that accounting can be quite tedious and also a bit boring. So how do you kind of build the resilience to, stay focused and still do well in what you're doing?
Yeah, I think for me, it's to do with that I'm curious.
Mm.
I'm curious about numbers, right? People have different things to be curious about. I'm curious about numbers. I find numbers easier to work with and to communicate than other things. So, people do marketing and stuff, they're able to describe all forms of stuff. For me, even for me to remember something, I'd have to turn into a number to be able to remember. So if I'm going walking about and I see numbers, I'm able to remember what I saw than just seeing things, being done. So I think I fortunately earlier on I was able to see my strength in that. So and then the other bit is being listen, it's work, right? When I was growing up, work was not meant to be fun, unfortunately. So I didn't have a mindset of, oh, I have to really, really enjoy it before I had to do it. For me, it was more about understanding, being able to apply and build up as you go along, right? So it's taking me a very long time. I've been doing this for 20 years, so it's taking me a long time to get here. And initially, it was tedious, it was boring. So it wasn't easy, but with experience, right? And you get used to it over time. Um, and then, as I said, one of the ways I counter it is every now and then, if I'm in a job and I'm not enjoying it, I'll move to a different job.
Mm.
Still in the same field, finance, but yeah, there are jobs that after you've done it 1 year, 2 years, you're doing the same thing and it's tedious. It's not as exciting. My advice would be move to a new challenging role, right? And yeah, as you stretch yourself, you get more kind of satisfaction in finance, really. Yeah.
Sure. What kind of skills would um, someone require in order to succeed as a financial professional?
Yeah, I think the skill at the moment, a lot of the stuff is tied to technology. So as I said, get experience, right? Even if, as you know, even if the experience starts with no pay, once you get that, then you can go for something that has, money. And then, you could start not as much money, but as you build it to a qualified status where you are, because we have our professional qualifications that we have to earn, then you can command much more income, right? But what you actually have to do is the kind of skills that you need is a lot of it. We use systems, so a lot of computer skills. So your Excel, especially, where you can manipulate data, large amounts of data, prepare reports, present it. Good communication, especially being able to talk through numbers to non-financial people. So you're able to relate the numbers to kind of everyday language and settings, which will make people understand. That's very, very important. Also, we do a lot of forecasting. So, we do budgeting, forecasting. You should be able to effectively project how a business is going to look like in a year or 2 years time based on what you have, based on the data you collect. And being able to do that effectively is a very sought after skill. Yeah, and then generally you have to be good with numbers. It doesn't mean you have to be someone who is naturally good, but you could build it up, learn, and develop that skill.
Okay. So you mentioned about like movements and kind of you've had like 20 years of experience. Could you kind of provide a high level view of what that looked like?
Yeah, so what that looked like, I went to university. I did accounting with tax. That's my degree. During university, I started work experience, and then over summer, I did some agency jobs. Once I had my first experience, just registered with agencies, and
Okay.
then to do some work. Some of them might be just basic data entry and stuff, but also building experience. So did that after uni. Started as finance assistant, where you do more basic budgeting, presentation, spreadsheet work, and then moved on. And then whilst I was doing that, I also started to do my chartered accountancy exams, which would eventually, um, after 3 years, I qualified as a chartered accountant. And that's kind of the basic if you want to be an accountant and then move on. So yeah, then I moved on several jobs,
Yeah,
some contract jobs, some of them interim, some of them permanent jobs.
sure.
Uh, build up from what we call bookkeeping, which is more like your purchase ledger, your we have something called balance sheet reconciliation, bank recs. Move on, then I got to the point where I was able to put a whole set of accounts together. Got to a point where I could actually deal with auditors, and present accounts, and then built on and move jobs to this effectively this level. And what it means is over 20 years, I've done about 10 different companies.
Wow.
And it all of it, you learn and you build experience. Sometimes some of the most challenging, that's where you learn, and that's where you build some good skills, right? And it also meant I've worked with different systems, different people, ways of working, etc. And it builds you up, and I've encountered different people, different leaders, and I've learned from them as well. So yeah, and that's what kind of has brought me up to this level.
And how did you kind of manage the transitions each time to be able to go into a new company and then quickly get yourself abreast with the way that they work in order to conduct your role?
Yeah. I wouldn't say it's always been easy.
Yeah.
It has been, you know. I mean, there've been jobs where I go in, I have to work weekends, work late to get abreast with what's going on to fix a problem. Um, and I'll normally go into a job, obviously, try and find out as much before I accept. Um, and when I go in with a clear mind, I would obviously speak to people in the business on all sides, so both at the top as well as at the bottom, find out what's going on, get the history. I'd have my own procedure notes. Sometimes you go into places that, because some of the key stuff that we talk about, financial controls and policy, there are some places that's not there yet, and I have to develop it and effectively establish those and implement them. And if it's not there and I have to do it from scratch, sometimes it's easier. If it's already there and it's not as robust, and I have to amend it and ensure that the culture changes, and to get people to follow. Sometimes it's a bit challenging, and I have to adapt, and find ways to be able to make that work in the organization. So I would say I have best practice of how I want things done based on my training and my experience and my professional body. And effectively what I aim to do is, as I go into an organization, to eventually get the organization to that level. It might take time, but that's the ultimate. And once I'm able to pursue that, then it's easier to deliver in the organization.
You mentioned that you did, so to become a chartered accountant, you did your professional qualification. Which one was it that you did?
Yeah, so mine is ACCA.
Okay, so what was there a specific reason why you went with ACCA? Because I know there's various other ones like
Yeah,
CMA,
yeah,
AAT.
that's right. Yeah. So for me, because I've done A-level accounting, then university.
Yeah.
By the time I was in uni, ACC actually came into university and said, "Oh, you can sign on, and when
Yeah.
you sign, you get the first two levels." I think because I didn't do audit, so yeah, I had a lot of exemptions.
Assumptions, yeah.
So I actually signed on whilst I was in university, and got some good exemptions. I think I had to do just two papers in level 2 and then do level 3.
Yeah.
So yeah, so because of that, so it
Yeah.
made it easier for me to do ACCA. And also I thought ACCA was very good because they are, so accounting, some people stay in audit, which is very straight. It's more financial accounting.
Yeah.
We'll go CIMA, which is management accounting, more, and is more of the internal reporting to management and stuff. But ACC kind of does
Yeah.
both the actual and the management. And I thought that I wanted that, and it was easier to have that flexibility with ACCA.
Sure. And you mentioned about financial controls and reporting. What's that all about?
Yeah, so the key is, you see, finance, which is effectively money, right?
Mhm.
Cash. That's what runs a business. Yeah, we call it lifeblood of a business.
Mhm.
So just like, you know any any human or animal without blood, you will not be able to exist, right? It's the same as businesses. So a lot of the times when you hear business collapse, banks have collapsed, it's because they don't have cash flow. They have cash flow problems. Yeah. So our key task is to look, one, monitor the flow of that money. So there's the inflow, which is your revenue, your sales you make, the outflows, which is your expenses, right? So in terms of financial reporting, it's effectively reporting on that. Yeah. How much a business is making, how much is spending, how much profits they are making, because the profits will tell you whether the business is going to be successful in the long run. And then the other bit is the what we call the balance sheet, which is the worth of a business. So what's the value you put on a business? What's the value already in the business? What's their assets, net assets, net worth, right? Just like, someone will say, oh, my net worth is this, which means that if you take all the assets, take out their liabilities, so how much they own and what they owe, then that's their net worth, right? So same, and I do that for businesses, and that's the financial reporting side. The financial policy and controls, that's to ensure that you safeguard the reporting, really. You safeguard their cash, you safeguard the assets, you prevent fraud,
Yeah.
You prevent errors, mismanagement, of companies' assets, company funds. So you have all of that. You ensure there's proper accountability in the organization. You make sure the processes, the procedures are well set out. There is segregation of duties, and people are held accountable effectively, right? Because a lot can happen in any business, if no proper policies, controls, checks, balances, all sorts, right? A whole industry can fall apart, right? So it's very important, very, very, very key. Yeah.
In terms of your growth, have you had a mentor? And if you have, how they supported you, like a career mentor?
Yeah, so I've had people along the line who have, encouraged, looked over my work, doing something good. I've had that, which is excellent, right? I would say when I was doing my ACA, at some point, I did get a proper mentor through the profession. So they said, oh, if you need a mentor, submit your details. We'll submit people who are interested in mentoring, and you can select. So I had a good mentor, and we were able to, get along, meet regularly. He kind of guided me and everything, which was excellent. So that's helped. At the moment, I don't have a mentor, unfortunately, but I've learned a lot from the people I've worked with.
Yeah.
And maybe that's also good. That's a positive when you've worked in different organizations, isn't it? Because you see people who are really good at their stuff, and you learn from them, and you see good work ethic, and that up. Yeah. So yeah, by and large, there are a number of people I've, learned from, and who've helped me.
Okay. I know that you previously mentioned that if someone wants to get into accounting and finance, then it would be good if they can get some form of work experience, even if it's like some form of volunteering and it's not paid. What practical ways can they go about to secure the work experience within the
Yeah,
finance roles?
yeah, practically online. Online is one of them, right?
Yeah,
On the internet, prepare your CV, get it ready. That's one of the practical ways. And other ways is to speak to friends and families, people in your network, and see what's on offer, right? Um, my first experience, I met someone in university who had actually had his own business, and he said,
mm,
"Oh, do you want to come work for me? I need someone to do my bookkeeping, you
mm,
know." So yeah, I think it's mainly being available and open,
yeah,
and yeah, and also I it's not just about having the experience before you get a job.
yeah,
Let me put it away. Because a lot of the, as you start the career journey, a lot of it is stuff that you might have done in either college or university to do like data input, spreadsheet work, sometimes typing letters, etc. Right? So it's effectively getting your foot in by showing your transferable skills and say, okay, there's this job, maybe a payroll job. I need to enter people's salaries. I've already done a lot of spreadsheet work, and I can bring that into the role. So showing your transferable skills is good. And there are a lot of agencies who recruit for accountancy jobs, and,
yeah,
and just preparing your CV and approaching them and being available, really, you know. Some of the jobs I had, it was mainly because I was very available and kept
yeah,
pushing the agency, calling them every week for several weeks until I had the job, right?
mm,
Uh, yeah. And then once you get the job, you build on it, you prove yourself, and a number of agencies, if you get your first job in court or you work with them and you do well, they will be more than happy to always, put you to a new assignment if when one becomes available.
throughout your career, what are some of the lessons learned that you've picked up along the way?
Well, I'll tell you, one is hard work, and sometimes, it depends on the job, right? So there are certain jobs you get after a while, you know that if there's a lot of work involved, right? You'd have to raise your standard and meet it. And it might be very not so comfortable, might be a bit painful. You might even have to call people in your network and etc. and say, "Oh, look, I'm stuck here. Can you offer me help or advice and stuff?" But the good thing is once you're able to deliver, it means that you've been uplifted to a certain level that is good for you for the rest of your career, right? So good work ethic, hard work, you have well, integrity is very important, right? So there's nothing wrong with saying, okay, I did it how I understood it, but I got it wrong,
Mm,
right? And obviously, let's be honest, there's politics at work, so you have to be careful who you tell that, right? But yeah, obviously, because the work people can use it against you.
yeah,
That's the real world, right? So and that's all part of things. You have to be conscious of the people, the environment you work in, the
yeah,
culture of the company, right? It's not every company that you might like. There are certain
yeah,
companies that you might go in and you think the culture is not good for me. Best is to look and move on, right? Yeah.
yeah,
So why I say integrity is if consciously you did your best,
yeah.
but it's not your fault, then that's fine.
Mhm.
But don't try and cover up, right? We all make mistakes. Don't try and cover up. especially when it's obvious, right? Because you might not learn the lessons that you need to learn, right?
Yeah.
But integrity is important as a finance person because it's not, you could be locked up you understand. If you are not honest, right? You could be locked up. But not just that, but also, you know, at a certain point, companies do credit checks and everything on you before they employ you, right? So if you have integrity, it means in your personal life you would have that as well, and that helps you, right? So those are key, but also communication, being a good kind of interpersonal person, so being able to relate well with people, right? That's very important.
Yeah.
It helps you get along at work. And it also helps other people who you might need their help to offer it, right? Because you're able to get along with people. So those are very, very important. And as I said, good communication. A lot of what we do, you have to explain it to other people in the organization. And there are a lot of people who say, "Oh, I don't like figures," or "I don't want to know about figures," or I don't want to deal with accountants," right?
Mm-hmm.
You'd have to have an approach which is easier to communicate to and with, and easier to get along, so as to be able to meet your objective, really.
What would you say is your greatest or has been one of your greatest strengths, and how have you leveraged on it?
I think one of my greatest strengths is, and what I just said. So I'm able to, over time, I built a number of experience.
Yeah.
I'm able to see the big picture and breaking it down into moving parts. And with that, know how to bring it all together again, right?
Yeah.
And the reason why I say that is a lot of what we do, we go through audits. So an auditor will come in, look, and start picking up holes in the work I've done, or the work, and you should be able to communicate and to effectively prove to them that the work you've done is accurate, and sometimes accurate to the penny, right? And you can imagine so many transactions going throughout the year. So it's able to see how the impact of all the transactions to the final financial statements that we will publish. And when an auditor comes and audit you, to be able to explain how the figure has been made, the figure was calculated effectively. So I think that's one of the key strengths. And another strength is I'm able to work well with a lot of systems, because a lot of the transactions, the financial data is all going through systems. So I'm able to go into an organization, even if it's a new system, interrogate, write down my procedures, and know how to be able to use that system to produce, the work effectively.
Sure. What are some of those systems that you used or come across?
Yeah, so one of the main ones is a SAP system, SAP.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, very common for a lot of international organizations. Yeah, and obviously Excel as well.
Yeah.
As I use Excel, different formulae, macros, VLOOKUPs, SUMIF, all that, to be to present your work. And then we have other systems like Sage Accounting. So I've used a number of systems. Throughout my career, Hypro, Netspace, Sun accounts, QuickBooks.
So, what advice would you give to aspiring finance professionals who are looking to establish effective financial management practices?
My first thing is, if you want to establish effective financial management practice, you have to have an idea of what it looks like and how it looks like and how it will be implemented. So it's more of a planning stage. A lot of the times, you need a good financial policy. The financial policy effectively directs and controls how the organization manages its finance, right? So once you have that, then you can get buy-in of a lot of the time board of directors to be able to implement that in the organization, right? And then once you start implementing, that's where you look at the financial controls, the internal controls. So, simple example, there has to be segregation of duties. So what we mean by segregation of duties is the person entering the invoices is not the same person who is authorizing them, and it's not the same person who is paying them or changing the bank accounts. So it has to be different people to prevent fraud and errors, right? And manipulation, right? So those are the kind of controls that you put in so that, and as part of a good financial management practice, you have to have monthly management accounts. So effectively, you don't wait to the end of year or sometime in future before you monitor your accounts. Yeah, effectively, you'd have to have a budget. You have to monitor the budget, actuals against budget. You have to investigate variances, and you have to be doing that on a monthly basis. Right? You have to introduce forecasting to know where the business is likely to end and what actions you're doing to ensure if you want better results and stuff. So it's all of these, right? Which people say is boring and tedious, but it's very important. Other than that, the business will start to not do so well. And if you're not careful, by the time you realize what's going on, it might be too late, right? So that's what effective financial management practices are about.
Okay, thanks. And I guess is my assumption right that it'll be easier to implement this in at least medium to large organizations as opposed to startups and smaller ones trying to
Well,
segregate, for example.
yeah. So there are certain things that is easier, but also it's a requirement. So a lot of startups, if they are what we call private equity, means that you're not raising money from the stock market, then there are certain things that you don't normally, it's not required. So you probably, to some extent, audit is not required. And therefore, there are things that you might be able to get away with in the beginning, and includes segregation of duty, because there's no spending money on certain things when the business is not well established, right? But also it means that as the business expands, you need to bring in experts to review your internal controls and to implement certain things that's necessary, right? Yeah, but and I think what you're talking about is what we call the cost of regulation.
Yeah.
Regulation is very expensive, right? It might mean more people doing a job that just one person can do, but because as you talked about segregation of duties, audit and all that, yeah. So yeah, a lot of the things that I'm probably referring to are more of medium to large organization, public listed companies. which is an absolute requirement. Small business, you use, we say you carry your coat according to your cloth, isn't it?
Yeah.
And build on as with time, really.
Okay. And the final thing is, I know all the young people always want to know how rewarding is this pathway. And then I guess if you have any final words as well after that.
Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, if you want to know how rewarding, you go on the internet, Google a couple of roles, and you can you see the salary, right? So you chief financial officer, you get salary, financial controller, you get salary, finance manager, you get salary, right? It's obviously you're looking after money, so they have to pay you a decent money for you to be comfortable, isn't it?
Yeah.
Problem is taxes, right? Because the more you earn, you get too much taxed, right? And it's all part of financial knowing more about taxes and finances to be able to manage it very well, right? But it's rewarding. It is rewarding that most accountants get paid good money. Yeah.
Thank you so much for sharing your career journey and insights as well into your domain of work. It's been really eye-opening. So yeah.
Yeah, thank you too. And as I say, I think hard work is very necessary. It's not always comfortable. It builds you up, and there's the reward of the money, right? As well as being in control, in quotes, of your destiny, because every organization or business want to hire you because there's something you bring in on board, and they want to see that you're delivering that value, right? It's unfortunately, it's not walk in the park, because other than that, the organization feels they're losing value, right? They're not going to pay you to chill or to be too comfortable, unfortunately, right? Yeah. But as you build it, it becomes part of you, and you get to a point where you are comfortable in that kind of zone because you're not bored and you're actually delivering something and it's fulfilling in the end, right? So that would be my advice.
Great, thank you.